In the beginning there was nothing but none, the dark, infinite, primordial water that stretched in every direction without limit, without surface, without bottom, without light. No sky above it. No earth beneath it. No time moving through it. Just the vast, silent deep, waiting without knowing it was waiting for something to emerge from within itself. And then something did. From the depths of none, a mound of earth rose. The Egyptians called it the Benben, the first solid thing, the first place where something stood rather than floated, the original hill from which all other land would eventually spread. And on that mound, or from that mound, the first god appeared. Atum, the self-created one. He who came into being from his own will, who looked out at the darkness of the primordial water surrounding him and began to speak the names of things that did not yet exist. From Atum came the first pair of gods, Shu, the god of air and light, and Tefnut, the goddess of moisture. From Shu and Tefnut came Geb, the god of the earth, and Nut, the goddess of the sky. Geb and Nut lay together so closely, so completely intertwined, that there was no space between the earth and the sky for anything to exist between them. It was Shu who separated them, lifting Nut above his head and holding her there, stretched across the heavens, her body the arch of the sky, her fingers and toes touching the four horizons, while Geb lay below, the curve of his back forming the hills, his green flesh becoming the fertile land. From Geb and Nut came 4 children. Osiris, Horus the elder, Set, Isis, and Nephthys. These 5 would carry the weight of everything the Egyptians believed about life, death, order, chaos, and what comes after. Osiris, the first king. Osiris was the eldest son of Geb and Nut, and he inherited the throne of the world. Under his rule, Egypt was not a place of war but a place of cultivation. He taught humanity to farm, to plant grain in the black earth left behind by the Nile's flooding, to bake bread, to press grapes into wine. He taught the making of laws. He taught the building of temples. The world under Osiris was ordered and green and fed. His wife was Isis, his sister and his queen, the goddess of magic and healing, perhaps the most powerful being in all of Egyptian mythology, a goddess whose intelligence and command of sacred language was so complete that even the other gods moved carefully around her. She loved Osiris completely. She stood beside his throne and held the kingdom together with the same precision and attention she brought to every sacred art she practiced. And his brother Set watched all of this from the margins and wanted what Osiris had. Set was not a simple villain. He was the god of storms, of the desert, of the red land beyond the fertile black soil the Nile left behind. He was chaos where Osiris was order. He was the hot dry wind where Osiris was the green flood. He was necessary. The Egyptians never believed that chaos was simply evil, that it could or should be destroyed. But Set wanted the throne. And he moved to take it. He built a chest. A magnificent chest, perfectly crafted, inlaid with precious stones and gold, sized precisely to fit one specific body, the body of his brother Osiris, whose measurements he had learned in secret. At a great feast, Set brought out the chest and offered it as a gift to whoever could fit inside it perfectly. Guest after guest climbed in and found the fit imperfect. Then Osiris stepped inside. The lid slammed shut. Set and his conspirators sealed it with molten lead and threw it into the Nile, and the Nile carried the chest containing the still-living god into the sea, and the sea carried it to the shore of a distant land called Byblos, where it washed up and a great tamarisk tree grew around it, enclosing it entirely within its trunk as the tree grew to enormous height, fragrant and beautiful, hiding within itself the imprisoned god. Isis searches the world. When Isis learned what had happened, she did not grieve in stillness. She cut her hair. She tore her garments. And then she began to search. She searched the length of Egypt. She crossed the sea. She came to Byblos and found the great tamarisk tree, and something in her, her divine awareness, her magical sensitivity, recognized what was hidden inside it. The king and queen of Byblos had cut the tree down and used its magnificent trunk as a pillar in the hall of their palace. Isis came to the palace, disguised, and worked her way into the queen's confidence until she was trusted as a nurse to the royal children. She was revealed as a goddess by her nature, by the light that surrounded her, by the transformations she was seen to perform, and the king and queen, awed and frightened, gave her what she asked for. She opened the pillar. She retrieved the chest. She brought it back to Egypt and hid it in the marshes of the delta while she went to find her son. Set found the chest first. He opened it. He looked at the body of his brother. And he cut it into 14 pieces and scattered them across Egypt, 1 piece in each of the lands of the kingdom, so that Osiris could never be made whole and could never be restored. Isis, when she discovered what had happened, did not stop. She gathered her sister Nephthys, and the two of them began the search again, this time for the pieces of a god scattered across an entire country. One by one they found them. 12 of 14. 13. And then 13 was the number that held, because the 14th piece, the phallus of Osiris, had been swallowed by a Nile fish and could not be recovered. Isis fashioned a replacement from gold. She gathered the pieces. She wrapped them in linen. She called on Anubis, the jackal-headed god of embalming, who had come to the marshes guided by the smell of grief and divinity both, and together they performed the first mummification, binding the scattered god back into a single form, preserving what could be preserved, substituting gold for what was lost. And then Isis, in the form of a kite, a bird of prey, hovered over the wrapped body of her husband and beat her wings with the force of her love and her magic, and breathed life back into him, enough life for one last union between the god of the living world and his queen. From that last union, a son was conceived. Horus. Osiris descended into the underworld to become its king, to rule the dead the way he had ruled the living, to sit in judgment over every soul that passed through the hall of the afterlife, to preside over the weighing of the heart that would determine where each person went after death. He never returned to the world of the living. But he never truly left it either. Horus and Set. Isis hid in the papyrus marshes of the delta and raised her son in secret, keeping him from Set's knowledge, protecting him from the desert god's reach while the boy grew into the god he was born to be. Horus grew to be a warrior. A falcon-headed god, the embodiment of divine kingship, the living sky, his right eye the sun and his left eye the moon, his wings spanning the horizon when he flew. He came out of the marshes and he challenged Set for the throne of Egypt, the throne that had been his father's and that Set had occupied since Osiris was scattered across the land. What followed was not a single battle but a contest of 80 years. 80 years of struggle, transformation, and endurance recorded in the Egyptian texts in extraordinary detail, the two gods fighting as hippos in the deep water, fighting in their divine forms, changing shape, appealing to the council of gods, each winning some contests and losing others, neither able to simply and definitively overcome the other. Set tore out Horus's left eye in one contest. The moon, pulled from the sky, destroyed, leaving the nights dark. Horus wounded Set in his most vulnerable form. The gods of the divine council watched and debated and delayed, unwilling to give a final judgment, some siding with Set's experience and power, others with Horus's legitimacy and youth. It was Osiris who ended it, speaking from the underworld in a message that was impossible to ignore. He asked the gods a simple question: name one thing stronger than death. None of them could answer. And the gods who had delayed and equivocated for 80 years gave Horus the throne. Set was not destroyed. He was given dominion over the desert, over storms, over the red land at the edge of the world. Chaos was not killed. It was placed, bounded, assigned, given its territory. Because the Egyptians understood that a world without Set would be as incomplete as a world without the desert horizon, as unbalanced as a sky with no storms to break the heat of summer. The eye of Horus, the Wadjet, the eye that had been torn out and restored, became one of the most powerful symbols in all of Egyptian belief. Protection. Healing. Wholeness restored after destruction. It was painted on boats, carved into amulets, placed over the wrapped bodies of the dead, because what had been torn apart and made whole again carried within it a power that untorn things did not possess. The weighing of the heart. Every person who died in ancient Egypt eventually came before Osiris. The hall was vast. 42 assessors sat along its walls, each responsible for one category of sin that the soul was required to deny before them: the negative confession, the declaration of innocence, the accounting of a life. The soul stood before them and named, one by one, the wrongs it had not committed. Then the heart was placed on a scale. On one side of the scale, the heart of the person who had just died, the heart that the Egyptians believed held the complete record of every thought, every choice, every act of the person's entire life, a record that could not be altered or lied about, because the heart did not lie. On the other side, a feather. The feather of Maat, the goddess of truth, of justice, of cosmic order, of the principle that made the universe function rather than collapse into chaos. The lightest thing that existed. The measure against which every human life was weighed. The jackal-headed Anubis oversaw the weighing. Thoth, the ibis-headed god of wisdom and writing, stood ready to record the result. If the heart balanced against the feather, if a life had been lived in sufficient alignment with truth, with compassion, with the order that held the world together, the soul passed into the field of reeds. The Egyptian paradise. A place of perpetual harvest, of the Nile in its most generous season, of reunion with those who had gone before, of life continuing in a form more beautiful than the one left behind. If the heart was heavier than the feather, a creature waited beside the scale. Ammit, part lion, part hippopotamus, part crocodile, assembled from the most dangerous and consuming animals the Egyptians knew. She ate the heart, and the soul ceased to exist entirely, not condemned to suffering but simply unmade, erased from the record of existence, which was the thing the Egyptians feared more than any punishment. This was the final shape of the Egyptian cosmos. Creation from the dark water. A god made king. A god made dead and scattered. A god reassembled by love and made king of the dead. A son who fought for 80 years to claim what was rightfully his. And at the end of every human life, a feather on a scale, and the accumulated weight of everything a person had chosen, measured against the lightest possible thing. Not measured against perfection. Not measured against the gods. Measured against a feather. Against the simple, weightless truth of what it means to live without heaviness. Without cruelty. Without the accumulation of choices that press the heart down until it can no longer rise to meet even the softest standard the universe offers. That was the complete Egyptian world. It began with a mound rising from dark water. It ended, for every soul that passed through it, with a feather.